Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Mind Muscle Connection podcast. Today I have Aaron Strieker back on. We were just chatting off air. It's been I think early 2022 or early summer 2022, we said, since we had you on, man. And so a lot to catch up on. And yeah, really looking forward to picking your brain on some stuff today. And yeah, man, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Jeff.
I don't know if you remember that episode, but again, we just chatted around like your kind of background and just how to optimize your metabolism, some things from the hormonal perspective for men and fat loss and stuff like that. So definitely go and check that out, episode 158 there. But yeah, man, so it's been over 3 years now. Like I said, I'm sure there's been a ton that you've had going. I know you opened a gym. So yeah, just fill the audience on what you've been up to and some updates on you.
So as we recorded that episode, I had just recently moved to Bali, and I am still in Bali. So it's been about 3.5 years. I have another four or five-ish months here full time, and then the new wife and I, not that I had an old wife, same human, just different title. We will be setting up our mountain home base in Salt Lake City, Utah. So we're going to be buying a home and anywhere from like December to February, whenever things work out, we find the right spot. And then we'll split time back and forth between the island when we want our island months and then the mountains when we want our mountain and Amazon time, as I like to call it. So yeah, that's the big thing there. Like you said, opened a gym with my friend and business partner, Jackson Pios. We have a couple others in there as well. So that's been a monster project
Yeah.
because when we started, it was a rice field, literally. And now we have a huge, giant, I don't know the square footage because everything here is in, I'm like the American and everyone else is like Australian or Indonesian or something like that. So everything's in like meters and all these things that like I just don't understand. I just know it's big. So that's been a monster kind of side quest, as I like to call it. I did also a little side quest into bodybuilding this year, which ended up being incredibly fruitful. And I feel silly and probably should have started a couple years earlier with how that's gone, which has been really wild. And then just coaching is the bread and butter. Coaching is what I love most. It's where I get the most joy. It's where I feel like I can provide the most value to the world. So that is always my priority in terms of business.
No, absolutely, man. Yeah, your business definitely grown and is continuing to grow there. So that's awesome. I was going to ask you if you guys were planning on coming back to the States at all. So you're going to do a switch now back and forth where you'll do half and half in a way.
Yeah, or just have the option.
Yeah.
I just, not to derail the conversation too much, but I've now spent, I'll be 38 in March. I left the States when I was 30 for the first time, and I've spent like a majority of those 7 years overseas. When COVID happened, we did about a year-ish in the States bouncing around, maybe a little bit longer. That's just where I found out that I loved Utah and Salt Lake City. But other than that, I've pretty much lived in Asia with some stints in South America and stuff. So I'm just hard pressed to think that I'm going to come back to the States in whatever February and spend the next 30 years of my life there. I just don't see that happening realistically. But I like having the options of both. That's the beauty of being an entrepreneur in the modern world and stuff we live in is you can bounce around and you create a personal brand where you can show up and do a seminar here or there or something like that. And when you make friends all over, there's just tons of opportunity now in the world. So I intend to capitalize on that.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Would it be something where it sounds like it's not necessarily going to be planned or anything like that, but would it be like, I don't know if the seasons match up because do the seasons match up where it's like in Bali, or is it the opposite?
No, they do match up. Like when it's winter in the US, it's rain season here. So it's kind of like shit and shit.
Okay.
You train cold for torrential island downpours. So it's pick your poison kind of. But yeah, nothing's really like concretely planned, but I think it'll just be like, I'm sure, hey, winter's getting pretty gross and I'm sick of it. Let's go to Bali for 8 weeks. And there we go, sort of thing. And just having the option, which is nice.
Because that's always the biggest thing. Like here, it's nice to get winter and stuff like that. But man, after, like you said, a couple months of it, dude, where it's just like freaking cold, you can just tell you're not getting outside as much and you're not getting as much sun. You can start to notice that. So I didn't know if that was something where it's like, all right, we're going to go pack up and go to more. Because I'm assuming it's a warmer climate, obviously, in Bali.
Oh, yeah, it's very hot during winter or rain season, which is also another kick in the nuts. So it's like torrential downpours, but it's also
Humid.
100 degrees and 100% humidity. So you're like wet and sweaty, all wrapped up in one. Yeah.
What would you do with the gym during that time? Just kind of have it run as is. I guess it's self-sufficient then at that point, or
Yeah, self-sufficient. And that was always the goal. Right now, we're all a little bit more hands-on than we probably ever imagined it being. But once it's up and sustaining, which we are getting close, I shouldn't have to be doing much more hands-on type stuff. Like I'm still installing machines and carrying machines up and down the stairs and things like that. But once we stop moving things in and out as much, and I don't need to be as hands-on, we have more seasoned employees and things. People have like their ownership over things and full processes in place. There's a lot of things that I can just manage from overseas. And there's even things that I'm like excited about too. Like saying equipment in the United States is so easy because we have so much gym equipment because all those years of Cybex and Hammer Strength and Paramount and Old School Prime when it was Strive and all these companies, like there's years and years of that equipment floating around the United States. But here in like parts of Southeast Asia and stuff, that stuff, it's like diamonds. It is so
Yeah.
rare and so challenging to get. So that's something that I'm excited about too, is once I am back stateside, like I can help. Because like we have obviously Undefeated here in Bali. I have a friend, Ben, who owns a gym in Bangkok. We have you network and meet different stuff, and everyone's looking for the same thing. So I'll be able to help some friends out with sourcing equipment or shipping it out to them and them not getting taken advantage of and stuff. So I am looking forward to some things where being boots on the ground back in the States allows me to do things that I can't do from here at the same time.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. What was is it more bodybuilding style gym that you guys were kind of going for, or is it just Gen Pop or just all the above, or what do you guys try to do there?
Yeah, so we have it angled as an athlete training facility.
Nice.
That is definitely angled towards bodybuilding. We don't have any, because one of the things here with the gyms is everyone recreates the exact same gym.
Yeah.
It's the all-in-one gym that they have like machines and stuff, but there's like your giant CrossFit section, and now everyone's pivoting to cater to like high rocks and where everyone's after the exact same market. What's that term in business used?
Niche.
Client avatar.
Avatar.
But no, there is no niche. That's the thing. Everyone's just shotgun approaching.
Yep.
We cater to everyone. Where we don't have a CrossFit section. We have a powerlifting combo rack and stuff like that, but we don't market it as powerlifting. We have no CrossFit stuff, but it's a bodybuilding gym for people. And over on this side of the world, like I would say, I think in the younger generation too, which I am now getting close to 40, so I'm a little bit more out of touch with. But I would say like bodybuilding, and I think a lot of that has to do with the popularity of Sebum and Instagram and stuff. I would say there's a bit more of a reemerging like renaissance of the bodybuilding culture in like the early mid 20s that wasn't there when I was in like early mid 20s. So I think it's just a lot more people doing it. So there's a lot more people like competing and stuff. Like we have a posing room. We're the only gym that has a posing room and stuff like that. And then one of the things that I was really excited about was I was given my initial role at the gym was like I chose the equipment.
Yeah.
So that I was very excited about. And that's one of the things that people love most about the gym is we don't have your back machine. That's like a lot of the gyms here will have a back machine. We have 12 back machines. We don't have a incline chest press. We have multiple incline chest presses. Like all the machines converge. So it was one of the things for like the people like you and I, or even what would be considered like a hobby builder. You don't have to necessarily get on stage or anything like that. And a lot of our members are other coaches as well. So it's just a really good environment of people who are there to train hard, support each other. There's not a lot of fucking about and stuff. And it's a very motivating environment, which is exactly what we wanted to.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I was going to ask you, what was the equipment requirements for you? Was there anything specific that you were looking for? Was it just, again, the variety of, like you said, different types of brands, or was it one, like, what were you looking at there?
Yeah. So there's obviously that balance of getting a couple brands, but I didn't. And that's another thing that the gyms do here is that they cut a brand deal, right? Where
Yeah,
they
make
get
it one.
everything sourced by
Yeah.
one because they get a nice cost, a favorable cost on the machines. But let's be real, like no one makes the best everything.
Yep.
And if you go to any really great gym in the United States or anywhere, like they have a lot of everything because that's really what you need. Because no one's making, even like if I think about probably one of my favorite companies ever, equipment companies, Nebula by Tom Eilerman back in like the 90s and early 2000s. They're world famous for the Nebula leg press and things like that. But the chest press, which is what Arsenal ended up getting the IP to through whatever method, but that's a shit chest press. Like you have to put 5 plates on it and there's barely any load in the length and then feels like a jillion pounds in the short, right? They didn't do a good job there, but the seated fly is amazing. The hack squat is like top 3 of all time. The leg press is literally the greatest leg press of all time. They got so many things right, but no one's ever going to get everything right. So we went with a few different brands to get us, we went 4 brands to get us to open. And now we're piecing together, like I'm always on the lookout for little things. I have a little trick up my sleeve of something I sourced here locally, and we're gonna get it refurbished and stuff, which is like really rare and stuff. So just things that I'm fortunate to have privy information to from having some like really great friends in the States that are gym owners, and things that I've learned over my 20 plus years lifting and being exposed to, where out here it's just a way for us to differentiate in the equipment selection and knowledge there and sourcing things.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. What is your favorite? Like, what's the machine that you freaking love the best at your gym that you guys have?
And that I love the most. So one that was, this one's a little bit more recent in my memory, so maybe I'm being a little bit more biased than that, but I really the Jim Lecco pendulum squat. And the reason I love it for a couple reasons, has a small footprint, and that's something to be considered because in many places of the world that are not the United States and Canada, like space is not unlimited. You go to these gyms in Texas and stuff, and they're the size of literally like Walmarts.
Yeah.
You don't, there is that spaces, there are not spaces that size in the rest of the world. So it's a small footprint, which is nice, and it just works, right? That it has a very smooth resistance profile. It's not one that like crushes you in the bottom because it doesn't have a counterbalance. And a lot of the pendulum squats that don't have a counterbalance are brutally hard in the bottom. Watson makes one like that. That's horrible. I won't even use it. It's so bad. So that one, I passed on it originally when we imported our container from Jim Lecco. And then I used it at a friend's gym, and I was like very salty about my decision. And I was like, I fucked up badly. And then I was just cruising. I don't even know what it was, like WhatsApp or something like that, and I spotted one, like someone had a Jim Lecco pendulum like inside Indonesia. Because one of the things with Indonesia being an island nation is like import taxes are absurd.
Yeah.
Like on shipping and stuff. It was in Indonesia, and it was jumped on it immediately. So that was like a giant win. I was super, super pumped about that. So now we have that in the gym. I've had it for maybe 3 weeks, and I just love it. It's really smooth. And what I like is, I'm sure you've probably used like the Predator pendulum squat or the Arsenal,
Arsenal, yeah. Arsenal's the
or
one I've used the most.
yeah, that, or even I know I know the version 2 Atlantis, you have an angle that you can modulate on it. But what I found is when there's so many options to configure, you get lost in the
Yep.
sauce and you don't know what is the best setup for you. Let's say you can move it forward and back like 6 notches. Is notch 4 the best, or should it be like notch 6, or should it be notch 5? And if you don't take like perfect notes, you don't know if you set it up last week on notch 5 or notch 6. Was your incline setting on 2, 3, 4, or 5? And unless you like have video and those sorts of things, like you can set yourself up like not the best, and you hang yourself by too many options. Like don't get me wrong, there's going to be a best option for you, but it requires like a pretty intricate knowledge of like biomechanics and stuff to set it up well and quickly. And what I love about the Jim Lecco pendulum is like there are no settings. It just works. Just like the original. If you've ever used the Paramount Total Leg, which is like the original pendulum squat, there's not all these settings. It's just put your feet higher for glutes or put your feet lower
Yep.
for quads, and it's smooth. And this machine's, man, it's probably 25 plus years old at this
Oh wow.
point or older. And it's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, man. Yeah, it's crazy. Obviously, you get more into machines, and all machines are not created equal. So I'm sure you've obviously gone through the gamut on that one in terms of figuring out what works and what you like best. Yeah, man, that's awesome. One thing we didn't talk about is you now are a I Pro. Congrats on that, man. That's freaking awesome.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yeah, that was the goal, of course, but not in 1,000 years that I think it would actually happen.
Did you? So was this the first time you competed naturally? We talked off air, obviously, and stuff like that. But had you competed naturally beforehand, or was this the first time you competed at all?
First time ever. Yeah.
Were you just again just live the lifestyle basically, being a coach, stuff like that? Did you do like photo shoots, stuff like that beforehand, or things like those? That
Yeah,
kind
I've done, I think, like 3 photo shoots. But like in full transparency, right? Like I feel uncomfortable. Everyone loves this idea of doing a photo shoot until you have to like take your shirt off in public and everyone's like
of
looking
yeah.
at you and you have a
What are you
photographer
doing?
with you. Yeah, and then my skin's crawling and like my anxiety
Yeah.
shoots through the roof. Yeah, and that was pretty much the thing that kept me from doing a show. I lived so much of my life what I call bodybuilding adjacent, the dieting, the training, a lot of that stuff, and I love, but learning how to pose, I was like, I don't want to do that because I'm going to suck at it. And when you start at something new and you suck at it, it feels uncomfortable when it's not fun because you're not good. And then the whole getting on stage with my shirt off and there's people there, and like that just, even thinking back on it now that I've done it, like I'm getting that like skin crawling feeling thinking about it again. So that kept me from it. But ultimately, I'd reached a point where I'd built like my best physique that I ever had naturally. I was very happy with that. And I wanted to go on TRT because I wanted to get my own experience with it for that point, and I wanted just to see what the hype was about. And I had a lot of, and I'm sure you do as well, especially modern in the United States, you get a lot of clients. I'm sure like I once you are coaching males like 34 and up, I would say 15% of them or more is going to come to you like on TRT. And your results vary wildly from clinics. You get some really decent clinics, you get some really piss poor ones. And you have to learn about these things that you never thought you'd have to learn about to best serve your clients because they're incredibly underserved by their clinic. So I wanted to gain some real world experience so that I could coach from a more personal standpoint. So that was always my plan. So I just did some self-administered TRT, 150 milligrams per week. And I just picked in the middle of the number, right? Typically you hear 100 to 200. So I'm just going to go right in the middle was my thought process. And within 6 weeks, I had the physique my pie in the sky physique that I always wanted, which was like 210, 212 pounds at 10% body fat. Within 6 weeks, I was there. And then that was a little bit, what do you call it? Underwhelming. Because it was like, oh, this literally was just the differentiator, a little bit of testosterone, and your results, your efforts just got you so much further. So that's when I tossed around the idea with I think it was still girlfriend at the time, not fiance, but for whatever, my wife now, about doing a season of actual competing because I thought that if I got into like my 50s and I had never done it, that I would regret that decision. So like I'll do one season just to say that I did it, gain some experience. So that's what led me down that path.
Going from natural TR to using TRT, what were you noticing anything? Was it more so just you wanted to experiment with it, or did you notice anything like that was like, hey, I feel like maybe I do feel maybe a little bit more like under recovered? Was there anything like that, or was it just simply, hey, I just want it? And then maybe from there, go, what were the differences that you noticed from biofeedback day-to-day standpoint?
Yeah. So obviously this is just my personal experience, right? And everyone's experience varies, but I found that I didn't really get those quality of life, subjective well-being benefits that people talk about because I already checked all my major boxes.
Yeah.
Like sleep hygiene, dialed. Nutrition is literally like part of who I am. My training and stuff like that was already really well just designed and all those things. I didn't get these crazy boosts in energy or things like that. It really was just like immediate muscle and strength gains. The thing that I remember most vividly, it's probably like week 2 I'm on, and we're still following the same training program that we had always been following and stuff. And the pump that I got from the leg extension was like so brutal. It was like incapacitating. I was lay down because my leg pump was so bad. And I was like, this is insane. Just 2 weeks at that. And the way I describe it to people is, you ever watch the original Matrix movie with Keanu Reeves and everyone that came out in like 99? And
Been a
there's the
while.
one scene where they need to fly a helicopter and no one knows how to fly a helicopter. So she like radios into whatever their comms dude who's like out of it. And she's like, I need the manual for whatever Apache helicopter. And he like downloads it into her brain. And like she now knows how to fly a helicopter.
Same.
That's what it felt like. It's like you have just a deeper connection with how you can contract your muscles. Whereas like before, you would try as hard as you possibly could, but that connection was like limited by you being natural. And then when you're not natural, like those connections are stronger and you can just contract the muscles harder because the connection is stronger. That's like the best way that I can find to describe it.
And you could just, do you feel like you were able to like recover quicker, or was it more of an intensity thing and just digging deep more so?
It's yeah, so that's one thing that I will push back on people. I didn't find recovery improved at all because your increases in strength and how hard you can contract the muscle allow you to dig your recovery hole deeper.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing I didn't find at all any improved recovery times or anything. I would say that was all have stayed effectively the same. And that's always my argument. Like I get that question a lot, but when I was still natural, everyone I trained with was on gear and I was the only natural. And we followed the exact same training schedule because we all trained together. And we would all recover at the same rate. And I think it's one of those things that it's an adaptation. Like the human physiology is incredibly adaptive. So when I first started training with everyone who was on gear, like I was sore as fuck.
Yeah.
But like 3 weeks in, it was just Tuesday now.
Yep.
And for a year, it was just, oh, it's Tuesday, we do pull. Oh, it's Thursday, we train legs A sort of thing. And I think where a lot of people like either you need to give yourself a period to adapt and you need to take care of the big rocks that help with recovery, which is like sufficient fueling, sleep, hydration, stress management, a lot of these things where I think people truly do sweep those things under the rug. If you would have asked me when I was 25 years old, like, Aaron, how did your sleep is in nutrition and stuff is dialed, right? I'm like, yeah, it's all dialed. It was so far from dialed.
Nice.
It's not even funny. So it's one of those things you don't know what you don't know until you know that you didn't know it. But it really does make a giant game changer. Intra workout nutrition, post workout nutrition, very high carbohydrate intake if you are doing very high training volumes and long training sessions with higher frequencies and stuff, like these are necessary.
Yeah, so you still obviously need to watch your recovery. And like you said, you can almost get more out of it if you do really dial in those things. Whereas, like you said, a lot of people are probably just, okay, cool, I'm taking this now. And I can just, like you said, sweep those under the rug and not, and that's where you're going to get yourself into trouble and you're going to shoot yourself in the foot and you're not going to get the most out of it. And that's probably where a lot of people fall, right? It's like they don't have those habits in place and they go straight to that. And like you said, it's like you had that stuff dialed in. Just for some clarification, just so I understand too. So TRT, like for some people, they'll take it to help them get back into a good range with testosterone. But in your situation, you were already good and it was just like, hey, now you're going to maybe make it even higher. Is that kind of what you did? Or was there another level to the TRT that you did before competing and stuff like that?
No, you're pretty much spot on. I was always like a 540 to 570 nanograms per deciliter testosterone type of guy. That's been since I started pulling my own labs or started getting lab work when I was around like 29. So I had a solid 7 years of lab work, always right in that range. And for anyone who's not familiar with the range, like low testosterone is really 300 or sub 3. And the reference range chops off around, every lab's a little bit different, but like 1,000 to 1,200. What's funny enough is the reference ranges get modified every few years based
Yep.
on the population. And because as a population, our testosterone levels are shrinking, lowering, falling, whatever negative term you want to use there, the range is a lot lower. So for like years and years, the upper threshold of the range was 1,500. But I would say you're pretty remiss to find a natural in this day and age who's anywhere near 1,500. Maybe Doug Miller.
So if what would be the difference between someone being like, hey, I'm on PEDs versus I'm on TRT, right? Is there a difference there on that? Or is that just a gray area? Does it just depend? Or yeah.
It's super gray area. Like even with me, like I said, my TRT was self-administered because that really hasn't made it out here yet to this part
Mm.
of the world or like my specific part of the world. So you could just call it Aaron's just doing PEDs, but at a TRT level. But like I said, I glossed over the low end of TRT, if you're going to a clinic in the United States, you're probably going to be like the low end's probably around 100, maybe a little bit less, maybe 80 or something like that. The highest I've ever had a client, I've had multiple clients prescribed 200 milligrams per week. So like I said, 100 to 200 is about the range that you get. It is a very gray area. Like certain people can have relationships with a doctor that like I'm not a doctor, right? So who am I to call a doctor? But like I have a client who is prescribed 400 milligrams of testosterone per week because that's where he says he feels his best. And his doctor was like, okay, here's your prescription for that. I really cannot, in honesty, say that I believe that's TRT. But if you have a script for it at that level, legally, I think it would be defined as TRT, but you're in a little bit of a bro handshake kind of scenario with your doctor. But it is like very gray. I think if we were to use the most textbook definition, it would be a weekly milligram dose that would replace your testosterone of what you were at in your, let's call it like 25, 26. Many of us probably don't have labs from that time, so you don't really know. But I know for me personally, like 150 milligrams when I started put me at a super physiological number over 1,500. So my true TRT might be, I don't know, I'd be picking a number, maybe 100, maybe 110, maybe 90. I'd literally be arbitrarily picking some number, but less than 150. So let's call it that.
Yeah, and when somebody you're here in the States and somebody goes in and they get on TRT again, they're going to do it where they're not going to go to the super physiological level. It's going to be more like you said to replace it, and that's where you're going to have that lower dose, and that's typically what you probably prescribe for a lot of people here. But then again, you want to take it to the next level, then you could obviously do more. And I'm sure there's pros and cons to doing that, and there's things that you need to look out for going that high. And again, also just to throw this in, it's probably very variable from person to person, right? Like how one person feels at a certain level is going to be completely different for another person. And my understanding too, again, it's also where is your baseline health at as well too, right? I'm assuming that's probably going to have a impact on like how high you'd want to go with things as well too.
Yeah, I cannot understate how much the individual genetic variance is. I make no qualms that I am very fortunate to where everything's been very benign for me. When people say that, oh, he's built for this sport, that is me. I mean, I literally went from never competing in May, doing my first posing lesson, to top 10 at a pro show the first week of September. That's ridiculous. So I'm very fortunate that there's no denying like the genetic favorability there. I've had clients who start 120 or 130 milligrams per week. And in 6 weeks, they have so much like acne and bacne that it's like uncontrollable. Like that's the fucking loss of the genetic side of things. It varies wildly. There are things, however, that the healthier you are in general, the more benign things will be. If you're more overweight, you're going to have more estrogenic side effects because you have more estrogen receptors in the fat cells. So the fewer or smaller the fat cells are, the more favorable things will be from a aromatization standpoint. But that's typically like a good generalization. When starting anything, the healthier you are, you're typically going to have a better response to it.
Do you what's some maybe how often do you monitor your blood work now, and what are some things that you're really looking out for during this time from a blood work standpoint and even just biofeedback standpoint too?
Yeah. So in the beginning, and I should actually back up, I was really scared in the beginning. I'm a pretty conservative person. If people would actually, I'm conservative with health. Let's put it that way. So I was very trepidatious going into this and stuff because you hear a lot of the horror stories in those sorts of things. So in my first year on like TRT and then what eventually ended up scaling up into PED levels, I got my labs done 8 times. I was literally getting them done like every 7 weeks because I was just scared. And I think if you're healthy, lean, and I'll define lean as sub 15% body fat, and you're like not drinking, you sleep well, you're not doing like recreational drugs, your diet's in check, and like health is a big priority to you, and you want that kind of boost or whatever, unless you have that genetic loss of the lottery, like things are decently benign. The most common things from a blood work standpoint is some people get the elevation in hemoglobin, which is a concern because that's like your blood viscosity, right? Everyone's a little bit different, but I have had the client who was young, like 26, I think, very fit, like 11% body fat, great physique as a natural. When we started at, or he started at 100 and I think 150 or 175 or something like that. And within 6 weeks, his hemoglobin was like out of the reference range. And I was like, you need to manage that with supplements and medications and stuff because that's your blood viscosity. Certain things are like sometimes we see rises in liver enzymes, the non-specific liver enzymes, AST and ALT, because of like protein turnover and nitrogen retention and those sorts of things. But those are like rather benign. But your blood viscosity, you don't want because you don't want your heart having to pump thick blood because that's going to impact like that causes the heart to hypertrophy over time. That's harder work on your kidneys. Those are like I should not say non-recoverable, but like you're putting almost immediate wear and tear there. So that would be like the first thing I would really look out for is that rise in hemoglobin. And then any kind of reactionary responses to carrier oils is another one. So that actually happened to me. A lot of medical testosterone is in an Arachis oil, like pharma, like from the pharmacy. And that was the first one that I went with. And by the end of the first week, my like wrists, fingers, and stuff felt like so swollen. And I didn't understand why. And then I did some digging and something was like, if you're like, a lot of people don't respond to Arachis oil. And I'm like, oh, let me look at what I have. And it's Arachis oil. And I'm like, you don't say. Okay. So then I pivoted to, I think like grapeseed oil or whatever. And then within 48 hours felt completely normal again. So there is some differences in how your body responds to things, but in blood work, yeah, the hemoglobin is the immediate thing to look out for. And then elevated estrogen. That's probably the thing that gets people the most. Everyone thinks about it as just like gyno, which is like gyno's like the final boss of high estrogen. That's the final thing. But like you can get a little bit moody or upset. You get really water attentive, and it's hard to decipher if you're getting fat or if it's just water because it will fuck with your head a little bit. That can raise blood pressure through the water retention there. So that's one that everyone's sensitivity to aromatization is very different. I'm a very high aromatizer, even if I'm super, super lean. So even at like 150 milligrams for me, I still need some estrogen modulation because it will just climb out of the reference range and you get lethargic and stuff like that, which is not fun. But those would be the main things I would say you have to look out for.
With estrogen, again, you obviously don't want it to climb and get super high, but you also, I think, I could be wrong here on this, but some people also try to like completely crush it, and but you want some sort of estrogen as well too, right? Like you want to find that
Yeah.
Goldilocks zone there of estrogen.
I use it as like a bell curve distribution, right? You want to be like two standard deviations or maybe one standard deviation away, like too low of estrogen. You feel awful. You get really lethargic. Your skin gets really dry. Your lips get like really chapped and stuff like that. You can be really emotionless. You feel like a robot, which is an awful way to feel. Like nothing feels good. Nothing feels bad. Everything just feels like gray in the middle. That's a very unpleasant feeling. But then if it gets too high, you get water retention and a lot of the things that I just said. But you want it, there's like healthy amount of estrogen. A lot of males will think like lower is better. Lower is not better. The right spot for you is where you want it.
Yeah. And you would find that out again through biofeedback. And then if you are getting blood work done as well too, right? Regularly, that's where you would figure. But I'm assuming biofeedback is probably going to be the quickest way to figure out if you're in the right spot there.
Because what's hard is like you could feel great at 55 grams, or I think it's picograms per milliliter for yourself, which is like just over the top of the reference range. Whereas I need to be in like the mid 20s, super individualized. Again, like with so much of this is like mileage really varies.
That's funny. You freaking froze for a second. I was like, "Oh, do we lose them?" Or I was like, or you're just really trying to bring that point home." But yeah, no, I think you just froze for a second. But yeah, like you said, it's very individual, right? I feel like all these things are. Again, we even talk about testosterone levels being super individual as well too. Again, there's the general ranges, but again, where you fall within that. So for you, then, was your goal then you started taking a little bit more and everything like that, and then you wanted to compete? Was it, hey, I'm going to have this phase where I'm really focused on adding some tissue, and then I'm going to compete and diet down, or what did that kind of process look like?
Yep. So it was like I had a coach through all this who's my business partner in the gym, Jackson. So I was really just like letting him steer the ship. The plan was because when I started, TRT was right at the end of my last natty diet. So I'm like 6% body fat, like bone shredded. It's time to grow. Let's take advantage of all this. Like
What,
body fat's really low. We have a good runway.
what was your weight? Sorry, at that point, it's
190.
okay.
Yep.
Cool. Sorry, keep
Um,
going. I just wanted to see where you were at there with that.
yeah, 190. So we were going to take advantage of like a kind of a big growth phase. And the plan was to prep to compete at the end of 2024. So I started TRT in January of 2024, bridged into using like PED levels April 1st. So I have 3 months. Then we escalated and we're okay, we'll do a 3 month build, start prep around November, or not November, like September, something like that to compete in like November, December. And then unfortunately I got a hernia in the first week of July. So that then put a wrench in things. I had the surgery immediately. And then I was out of the gym for really 8 to 10 weeks before I was like really training again. So then I picked up my build again in September, ran the build from September to March, then started prep in March. And a lot of that is around like when the shows were. Because because I live in Southeast Asia and inside not Vietnam, Indonesia, I have to compete under the rules of Indonesia, and you have to do a regional show in one of 7 Southeast Asian countries. And just the way that like things lined up, okay, like that first regional is June. That's how that lined up. But I could have done other shows, but I didn't want to be traveling all the way back to the States for a show in peak week. That's a 27 hours of travel. It's a lot for a peak week when you're trying to keep water retention and everything mitigated. So I wanted to stay on this side of the world for short flights and stuff. So I ended up having a 3-ish month build, and then that kind of fell apart a bit, and my physique deflated to potato physique, and I got fat. You're not lifting and all that stuff, and then or fat relative, and then started my build again from September to March, which went well, but I reached like a threshold where I was just so full, and we were trying to do all these tricks. My body was just fighting it. It was like I had put on as much weight in a single growth phase as my body was really going to allow. And yeah, I was getting like the resistance
Yeah.
strongly. It hated it at the end. I was putting honey on all of my meals, drinking 2 liters of orange juice per day, and just miserable.
What was the in that time frame? Like obviously you had the injury in there that threw a wrench into things, but what you said you ended at 196% body fat. Where did you end up in that time frame before you started the prep?
By the time I got hurt, I was up to 224-ish, and then body weight slid back down to 218-ish. By the time I started, was like could train again, and then my peak body weight before prep started was 236.
So you okay. So what from a caloric standpoint then, what's obviously a lot of that was muscle. I'm assuming obviously you gained some body fat during that time, but
Of
most of
course, yeah.
that was mostly, would you say most of it was muscle during that time or
Oh yeah, we're very well north of 50%.
what did your calories get up to? What did that kind of look like?
The highest they were was like 40, like 46 and change, 4,600 and change, like 4650, somewhere like that.
And was that the hardest part for you when you said your body gave that resistance was just getting in the amount of calories that you needed?
Yeah. Yeah. Because you could always like ramp your fats up, right? But what we know is, especially for someone who's on gear, like you don't need that hormonal support for fat intake anymore. And my fats are up to 75, I think, maybe or 75, 80. You just don't need more than that. There's no good argument for more fat. Like you could say, yeah, you could get in additional carbohydrate, but you will partition, or sorry, additional calories, but you will partition those calories less favorably. And the carbs are at like 700, and I was miserable.
Was those mostly around like your workouts and stuff, or did you? I mean, you probably had to just spread it out throughout the day.
Yeah, I was eating 6 meals per day, but when you have 6 meals, each meal is 100 plus grams of carbs. And yeah, it was all rice and rice varieties. I was having like puffed rice cereal, cream of rice, actual rice, honey on my rice, honey on my cereal, honey on my cream of rice, and a 2 liters of orange juice per day.
What was your rate of gain? Were you guys aiming for anything, or was it just, hey, eat these calories and let's see what happens there?
It was pretty consistent for a while until it started getting, body just started fighting it. And then as we tried to force it, my body was just like, I was just like dumping heat. I was so hot all the time. I was like sweating profusely. Like my body was literally fighting us and was like, I'm just going to dump all this heat into all these things. My wife and I would sleep at night and I'd have the air con set as low as it could go. And she would be like freezing and I couldn't have the comforter on. I have to have like just the sheet with one leg hanging out because I was so hot. So yeah, my body was just literally just fighting us badly at the end.
Yeah, man, it sounds like your freaking energy expenditure was through the roof at that point, right? Especially with all the body heat. Did you have to manipulate protein a little bit too? And what did you have to do with protein during that time? Because again, I'm
No,
sure. Yeah, go ahead.
protein was higher, but only because your like use of it is higher. So I think protein
Sure,
was
yeah.
like 270, something like that. Like nothing crazy high, especially when I'm pushing 235, 236 body weight. Like we're only a little bit over. That's like a 1.1, maybe 1.15, something like that body weight. Yeah, so it didn't, we didn't have to bring it down super low or anything like that. No.
So doing because I know you've done growth building phases in the past from a more natural level. What were the main differences that you saw there? And maybe we already explained that earlier, but I didn't know if there was anything that you saw that was different in terms of like, all right, I'm eating a ton of food. Did you notice any differences in terms of how the body responded, how you responded, things like that?
No, like food sources all stayed the same. My like training style stayed the same. My recovery capacity stayed the same. I would even argue that like recovery capacity starts to take a hit because your health kind of starts to take a hit when you're like pushing food that much. That was the only time I ever noticed that like my HbA1c like climbed on my blood work and stuff. But I'm like, when you're putting honey on all of your meals and drinking 2 liters of orange juice per day, like that's what's gonna happen. So no, like nothing really felt any different. And you squeeze everything you can squeeze out of something, and then things stop with progressing at the end. But I think it was just if I really sat back and looked at it, I'm like, okay, I'm 236 pounds. Last year I was 190. Like that's a lot of weight to put on in a single go, and to then ask your body to adapt it and manage all of it. I think it was just like maxed out. And I wasn't willing to do really unhealthy things to just force it along. And two, then it's just like the fatter you get, especially when your body's fighting you like that, and you force feed it and stuff, like you're just going to increase the rate at which you gain fat. Like all of your signals of a healthy build are gone. You're into like unhealthy build now. It was just the end and time to stop, really.
It sounded like it also lined up perfectly with when you needed to get into the prep phase anyways there. So I guess so that leads to the prep. What did that kind of look like? What were some changes there? I'm just curious to hear a little bit more about your prep and what that fat loss process looked like.
Yep. So in the beginning, what's really wild is how simple it all really was. So all like the honey came out, the orange juice came out, and that was really it. That was the only change that we made and that carried us through almost to my second show. All we had to do was pull the honey and pull the orange juice. And like we just changed things around a little bit. I kept intra workout carbs in through the entirety of my prep, 50 grams. But yeah, it went down from 4,600 calories to like 38 or something like that. And that carried us a very long way. And then through the first show, and then we pulled some additional fats like down to 50 from like 70 to 50. And that put us at like 3,600 calories. And we literally dieted straight into my winning my pro card on 3,600 calories.
Wow.
All I did for cardio is I walked 40 minutes in the morning and I just did it in my living room. We have a living room and a kitchen combo. So it's a little bit bigger. I timed it once. It takes me like 28 seconds or something like that, or to walk an entire lap. So I just did that. And then eventually got post the second show or right before the second show, we put in another 40 minutes in the evening. And I just did that in the living room. And that's literally what I did up until I needed to my pro card win. And the only reason we had to modify things for the third show is because I was now competing in a pro show and I was way over my weight cap.
Okay, yeah. So you had to be a certain weight on there. So
Yep.
you ended up competing you had three shows then, right? Am I
Three
you heard
shows.
that right?
Yep.
Okay. First
Yep.
two, basically it was just you cut out OJ and honey, did some more steps, and you were at what, 3,600 calories was as low as they got, and what was the rate of loss that you had during that time? I know you said you finished at what, like 236-ish was the peak.
236 was the peak. My first show in June, which was the regional, I was the morning of show 226, I think.
Okay.
So what happens is prep starts, right? Some like DHT derivative drugs come in, Masteron for me. So testosterone went up about double. Masteron came in as a secondary. And then once you get 10-ish weeks in, every coach is a little bit different. Some of your like fat loss agents like clenbuterol come in. I kept my growth hormone the same at 4 units. That didn't change at all. But I really like recomped through just like my first increased exposure to higher doses. I literally built muscle and lost body fat at the same time. Like I said, it was only a 9-pound difference from like my peak
Yeah.
fat of off season to on stage the first show. And then the first show was just like a warm up. Hey, you need experience. So like we didn't do anything. We didn't do any like crazy peaking, just a simple water manipulation for a couple days, kept everything the same, didn't modify anything really. And I did well there. Like I won both my classes. I took second in the overall, which I was very happy actually about because it really like taking second place, like there's no second place is a very good motivator. Let's put it that way. So then I was like really motivated. And then on stage, the morning of stage, I was 220 when I won my pro card. But that was like super dried out, water dumped, and those sorts of things. And then I don't know, 400 or 500 grams of carbs before getting on stage. So I was probably up another 2 to 3 pounds by the time I was on stage. Yeah, for winning my pro card.
I was gonna ask you. Oh, you said, hey, you guys increased the dose on some things, and so that obviously had that recomp effect. So I'm assuming that at that point, it's like, hey, you're probably not really looking at scale weight now. Obviously, again, you did have a weight cap that you needed to have for the pro show, but for this, you didn't necessarily need to have that. So I'm assuming it was probably more so just like physique pics, check-in, stuff like
Visuals.
that you were looking at that point.
Yep. Yeah. It was really wild. Like the scale really didn't change much for quite a while, but I was just like visibly like leaner and leaner. And one thing that I didn't gloss over, I didn't say at all. I ate the same exact foods every single day for
Yeah.
months on end. I made my own breakfast. I had lunch, two like chicken rice in mixed veg meals delivered from the same exact restaurant 7 days a week for 4 months straight. And then I had whey, a banana, and cream of rice for pre and post workout, like literally same meals 7 days per week from March 31st through September. So when you are that consistent, you can eat more food because you don't have margin of error.
That makes, I think the more dialed in you can be on that, man, it makes fat loss just way, way easier when you can be super dialed in on like the consistency of what you're eating. I'm sure you've seen that with your clients, right? It's like the more they try to be
Oh,
random
yeah.
with stuff, it's just kind of shooting yourself in the foot. Did it get in your head at all of not really seeing scale weight go? Because, when we associate fat loss, like I've told people this, I think when you're heavier, it's, yeah, we want to see your weight trend down. But as you get leaner, things do get a little bit more noisy. But it seems off the bat that was happening. Did that ever get in your head at all? Or is that where, again, having a coach was helpful to have that non-biased?
Yeah. One thing that I'm pretty decent with is if I have a coach, like I'm a good client. And I said, this is your project. Like you're making the decisions. I'm just turning my brain off. And that's what I did. I turned my brain off and I just did what I was told. And if he said things were good, that meant things were good. So but I could see, I was watching it happen. I'm like, I'm getting leaner. I'm not really hungry. Sure, I like would eat more food if I was like given it, but I don't need more. Like I felt satiated most of the time, but it was a very wild experience to like actually experience in real time, being like looking at the scale and like seeing a number and then seeing what my physique looked like. And I was like, how the fuck do I weigh this much? Like this doesn't make any sense to me. It was really wild.
Do you feel like your energy expenditure was so high because obviously movement, but obviously the muscle that you added on, or do you think it was some of the PEDs were raising that for a short period of time?
All things considered, I was still doing 15,000 steps per day. And how our gym's set up, the gym is on the second floor of the building. So we have a big staircase that comes up and then it's like a loop you can do. So I would just walk like between each set, I would just walk 2 laps. So I would net probably like 7,000 steps like during my training sessions just by doing that. And then those walks and stuff. So I did have a big energy expenditure from walking, but also just being heavier, having that muscle, like that consumes energy in and of itself. I purposefully ran like a higher training volume just because I wanted to leave no stone unturned, sort of thing. I didn't see how it could really be a negative so long as I was recovering aptly and my training performance was continuing to improve. So I ran like higher volume. And in full transparency, I wanted to play with all these toys that we put in the fucking gym. Like we have 3 pull downs, 4 pull downs, and 6 rows. I wasn't just gonna pick one and then one pull down and one row. And then if I did that over like my 2 pull days, there would still be like 2 of each plus that I don't even touch. So I wanted to play on them. So like I put them in the program and I had the time to dedicate to it. But I didn't do much else besides like work and train and eat my meals and do my cardio. But I was like happy to dedicate that for this sole season of my life. So I was doing a lot more as well.
Do you and this may go into the enhanced fat loss versus regular, but like most people here recomp, especially somebody that is at your size and at your level of leanness, right? Because I know you probably were still between what, like 10 to 15% body fat at that rate, maybe even when you were at the peak mass, probably between what, 10 to 15% body fat or so.
I was probably like 14-ish. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Which, I mean, still is lean. Do you feel like it is just the hormonal milieu that allows someone that's at your body size and body fat percentage? Because like low body fat, high amounts of muscle, that's like the worst. Like you get in a deficit, that's like the worst kind of, I feel like, combination to be able to recomp and build some muscle. But is it just really, you feel like the hormonal milieu that allows you to be able to do those things at the same time at that point then? And
Yes.
obviously focusing on your recovery and everything too, right? We know that you got that dialed in.
Yeah. Make no mistake about it. Like those work wonderfully. And anyone that says oh, it's like a 5% bump or whatever, like they're probably lying to themselves. It's the rules of the game are the same, but I don't know. If you look at basketball in like the 60s or something like that, where there was no like 3-point line yet, and it was all like the big man and the sky hooks from 3 to 4 fucking feet away from the hoop. And now in today's game, dudes are literally pulling up from half court like regularly. Like that, it's still the same game. The ball still has to go in the hoop, but like rules have bent largely. Like you can get away with things that were not even comprehensible in the 60s. So it's like things that you can just do. Like I could show up and eat 400 grams of rice, cooked rice with dinner, which is a pound of rice. And I'd wake up like even lighter in the morning and stuff because it's your body just gets like greedy. Your muscles get like really greedy with nutrients. Whereas as a natural, like they aren't able to get that greedy. So you don't partition food nearly as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That's super interesting. What were some differences that you noticed in terms of fat loss dieting enhanced versus on previous fat loss phases?
Because there were a lot of variables. Like I had never used Clen or anything before. So like Clen came in and that's just it literally is an effective fat burner. It increases your heart rate, which is like one part of it. This is higher sustained heart rate over the day, additional energy expenditure. Some of the different compounds, right, increase the nutrient uptake and stuff. So you're partitioning food better, you're lifting heavier loads, doing more volume. That's more energy expenditure in and of itself. So it would be really hard to quantify because there's just it's five different variables are
Yeah.
all different. So a lot of it feels the same because it's like from the Aaron taking actions is the same,
So
but it's if, me as a natural, okay, I do the exact same actions on Monday, maybe that yields me, I don't know, 100 grams of fat loss, which is probably way more than it actually does. Whereas like now, Aaron doing those same exact actions, so like my perceived effort is the same. Instead of 100 grams, I get like 50% higher or something like that. And that's for doing the same actions minus like the injections and those sorts of things. But that's how I would put it. It's your same efforts, just take you further.
what about from a biofeedback standpoint? Did you notice any difference that in terms of how you felt or anything like that in terms of being in a deficit?
Yeah, there was certain things like the one that I remember, there was a point where when I would yawn, my heart rate would flutter a little bit. And it took me a while to figure out that's what it was because I thought it was just like you ever get where like you kind of your abs get like little muscle spasms sort of things. It doesn't not like a cramp, but like they just maybe it happens to your tricep or something like that. Yeah,
Tricep,
like
yep.
little muscle spasm. I thought that was happening. I'm like, man, my like abs are doing this every time I yawn. And then I was like feeling, and then I was like, that's not my abs. That's my heart. That's like a heart flutter. So then I got scared and I was like, it's the clenbuterol. It's got to be the clen, right? So then I stopped the clen for a number of days and it was still happening. So then I like go down the rabbit hole as my estrogen was too high. So I had like, because I'm a high aromatizer. So like my estrogen will just climb. So then once I got that under control, that went away and it wasn't the clen. It's just my estrogen was too high. So that was like one that I like noticed. I stopped
And
sweating.
oh,
That
sorry.
was another one. Like body temperature, eventually, once you get lean enough, like I wasn't sweating ever at all. Like I was training and not sweating. I would do my cardio and not sweat. That was pretty interesting once things slowed down. I opted not to do any like thyroid support. I wanted to do things the quote unquote like hard normal way. Like I didn't do any of the like GLP-1s or anything like that. I wanted to get one under my belt, doing it like the old school way just to gain some experience. But those were the few things that I do remember being different where there's, oh, these are like some side effects happening of, okay, estrogen's too high. I'm getting these heart flutters when I yawn. When I yawn was the only time it would happen. There was the sympathetic like drive, which was great for a while. I would wake up at 5:45, just so ready to start my day, excited to work, excited to get up, have a coffee, do my journal, get to check-ins. Like I wanted to work. It was like the first time in my life where it was like borderline fun. Enjoy. I was like, I should probably sleep more, but I was like, I don't want to sleep. I want to get up and work because that's what I'm like really looking forward to, like that sympathetically driven. So it's great until it gets like too high and then like you can't turn it off and like you can't sleep and those sorts of things once you get lean enough. But that would happen even when I was natural dieting. You get lean enough that you just can't sleep because you're like cortisol's too high and stuff and you get those 3 a.m. wake ups. So that one was like a fun one until like you cross a threshold and okay, now it's not a positive, it's a negative. And then that one pretty much held on until the end of prep. You get super lean. You just can't fucking sleep at all. That's not fun.
So you obviously, as you get you fat loss diet, you're in a deficit, right? You start to get hungry. Maybe like energy levels tend to go down a little bit. Maybe even like libido will right libido go down. Were those things that you
Gone.
still happen,
Gone.
or they were all that
Oh,
was still
oh
gone
yeah.
and stuff like that?
Oh yeah. Like I said, our gym is on the second floor. So there's, I don't know, probably like maybe 24 stairs to get up to the gym floor. And it felt like I was climbing a mountain each
Okay.
day. I was like holding on to the handrail. And there would be and I have to like talk myself through it. Like, come on, Aaron, climb the stairs. Like my legs felt like 1,000 pounds. That was like my probably my least favorite part of the day. And then one of the other things is at the end, you get so lean, you start peeing like constantly. So I'd have to pee 3 times during my training sessions, and I have to climb up those fucking stairs again every time.
So it sounds like obviously whether you're enhanced or not, you get shredded. It's like you're going to still have these things pop up. It's not necessarily you're still immune to those things. It's just really from like a muscle mass standpoint, your body's just more likely to hang on to that muscle mass. You can probably be a bit more aggressive in terms of your deficit if you wanted to potentially, and like see that. It's just, but again, same things apply. Those biofeedback things are still going to pop up. Libido may go down when you're in that deficit, things like that as well too.
Yeah, very well put. The one caveat that you just kind of reminded me of, up until the very, very end for my pro debut, where things got, we just had to really push my body weight down quickly, and everything really tanked. Training performance was still there all the way through, even like peak week heading into my pro qualifier, still setting PRs and stuff. Even though like energy levels were lower and stuff, I would like literally set a PR on a training
That's
on like a
insane.
chest press. And then I would sit there in between sets with like my eyes closed because I was really tired. And then the time to do the next one, and I could set a PR again. And then like when I was done, I would like literally want to fall asleep. But training performance up until the final 3 weeks was still there setting PRs, which was, I was very surprised by that.
Yeah, that is super interesting, right? That like all those other things followed what you would typically see like in a regular phallus diet, but it was performance specifically that was able to stay elevated, which I mean lines up with hanging on to more muscle and everything like that and recomping, right? Like that. I think that just goes to show the importance of, yes, it all is important, nutrition, recovery, but like this training stimulus is obviously like vitally important in a fat loss phase when you're trying to drop and at least maintain muscle there. Let's see if there's anything else I wanted to ask about the fat loss phase. Yeah, super interesting stuff. I'm wondering too if I would imagine this is the case, how things like NEAT will decrease and stuff like that when you're fat. I wondered if those are still things that would happen as well too. Maybe not to the same degree. I don't know if you have any insider thoughts into that or anything.
The desire to do things was definitely lower. So I would imagine like from a, how would we call it? Like unmodified. If I was just left to my own devices, yeah, I'm not going to go for a walk on the beach or anything like that. But I was quite surprised where I got labs done after the, like 2 days after the first show. So that was June. And then I got labs done like 8 days after the final show, and then 3 weeks after the final show. But I had no what I would consider statistically significant reductions or modifications like thyroid or anything like that. So I was quite surprised at that. Yeah. My thyroid just doesn't really budge from all the years that I've had labs on it and stuff, whether I'm like relatively fat for Aaron or super, super lean, it just doesn't really change.
Again, probably like we talked about initially too, right? Genetic. I'm sure that's somewhat lifestyle thing. I'm sure you're freaking got that. You do have that dialed in, and that's going to be massive on the thyroid. But then again, it sounds like from a genetic standpoint too, maybe it's a little bit more resilient.
Yeah.
As well too. Cool, man. What does things look like for you now that you're post show? Are you have plans to compete again at some point? What are we working on now at this point?
So what originally was a one and done bodybuilding season just to dip my toe in it and say that I did it is now like a new part of my career, I suppose. I would be silly just to like, all right, that was my thing. I'm done now, but I have different priorities. Starting a family is my top priority. After the show was over, like I briefly mentioned, I got married like 18 days later after the final show.
Congrats, man.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Restoring my fertility is now the top priority. So I'm in a fertility protocol. I'm back on just TRT 100, actually prescribed now, not self-administered or self-directed, I guess would be the proper term. 160 milligrams per week. And then I'm running recombinant FSH alongside HCG as my fertility restoration protocol. I have some other small things in there like injectable L-carnitine, a lot of like antioxidants and stuff just to drive down like oxidative stress. I'm not doing any sauna or anything with like higher temperature stuff. No hot bath, as that's my priority to have fertility restored by the end of the year. Sperm typically works in about a 90-day cycle. I'm not sure how much, that might be covered on the podcast or not before you're like turning over like a new, what would be considered like batch sperm. Yeah. So running that for 90 days. And then I have some like tests that I'll do periodically just to see if things are progressing or not. So it's been new wrinkles and just staying healthy, right? So like health is now like an actual priority. One of the things that I was a little bit bummed about is I thought in prep I'd actually get in cardiovascular shape, but we didn't have to do any cardio. I just walked. So I just was shredded and still not in any good like actual cardiovascular shape. So now I have 3 cardio sessions in per week. I do one zone 2. I do one like zone 3 miss on the stair climber. And then I do 1 day of bike sprints with some zone 2 on the back end of that. So I have that in. And then, so I basically do it like every other day almost. And then I do a double on Saturday. And then I train upper lower 2 times per week, 1 set to failure, very low volume, very high priority on progression. So I'm basically just testing. I'm testing some things that I would never test before because I I always just like doing more volume because I like being in the gym. So like, I don't want to work out for 45 minutes. I want to work out for 90 minutes because I have the time and I like being here. Whereas on the back end of prep, I really did start like despising being in the gym because I was there so much. So I'm like, now I'm happier doing less and then doing the cardio and just, what's the word I'm looking for there? Playing devil's advocate. I'm testing like a very low volume program to see, can I improve on it and how do I feel about it and that sort of thing. But I will say I do very much so like it thus far.
I think it's always good to, from a volume, like people get into like such camps with the volume. It's like, why could you not do both at different times and depending on what you're doing, right? It doesn't have to be, because my thought on it is you can get away with it and you want to maximize muscle growth. It's like, yeah, you probably want to try and push as much high quality volume as you can. But like in your situation now, it's maybe you can get away with a little less and you're going to get, who knows, right? You just kind of have to test it out. My follow-up question to that would be with the low volume, obviously it sounds like some of it is psychological in terms of why you're doing low volume, but is it also you hit on oxidative stress and lowering that to help with fertility and stuff? Is that also kind of part of it as well too? Hey, finding a more kind of manageable, like kind of training volume that's going to fit with that and taking some stress off the body a little bit there as well too.
Definitely, definitely. So that's the part of it. And then one part I glossed over is now with any future plans of competing, I'm above my weight cap. So I can't grow anymore. So gone or me going on growth a build for what point?
Yep.
So my goal is to pretty much just stay under 10% body fat, somewhere a handful of pounds north of my weight cap, and then just see if I can make some micro optimizations and bring up some lagging body parts and really just test some theories a little bit. But I can't put on 15 pounds or whatever, because then I just have to diet it all off. And I just don't see much point in that. So that's a wrinkle that I wasn't really prepared for, but is a reality if I want to do that. And then obviously the normal pushback I get, and like, oh, we'll just compete in classic. And I'm like, I don't want to be that big. I have friends that compete in classic, and that's a whole new size of human that I have zero interest in being.
That's that build phase all over again, but probably to even more of an extreme there.
There's no reason Aaron needs to be over 250 pounds. Zero reason whatsoever.
Well, like you said, fertility is also important. And I think this sometimes does get lost. People do think that, for one, most people aren't going to ever be able to get to the level of muscle that it's going to be an issue, but too much muscle is probably not going to be from an overall health perspective. Like it does, you talk about the bell curve, it's kind of the same thing, right? It ends up getting to that point there. And it sounds like you're at the top part of it. Like, all right, I'm good here. I don't necessarily need to get any further.
Yeah, agreed.
So so you don't have to like really mass or anything. You don't have to be in a surplus. It's just finding that nice kind of like maintenance range, making sure biofeedback's in a good spot. And then again, obviously with the goal of fertility and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm embarking on what I'm gonna call like a 6, 12, 18 month, like smelling the roses phase. I'm food is restored, hunger is back. All my post show hunger stuff. It's October 30th. My show was September 6th. I'm like, I don't know, 7, 8 weeks now post show. Food is anywhere from like 36 to 3,800 calories per day. I eat 450 to 500 grams of carbs per day. I train 4 days a week. I do my cardio. I'm still lean. I'm still like sub 10% body fat. My body weight is higher than I did anticipate it being. My goal was to keep it at 220 to 223-ish. I think that was a little bit overzealous of a goal considering how lean I was at to make my weight cap. I was 227 this morning, which is still it's again one of those things where I have a really hard time believing it, that I'm holding this much muscle mass, staying that lean on 160 milligrams of testosterone per week. But I'm still like, training performance is even better than it was on the peak gear heading into my pro qualifier. I'm still setting PRs and stuff. So I'm having a lot of fun prioritizing health, like I said, with the new goal of starting a family and just like smelling the roses, right? The goal is to stay like pretty much right where I am right now. And I just get to auto regulate, which is nice. So I get to prioritize some other things and just enjoy it and reap some of the rewards and fruits of my labor over the past like year and a half while I prioritize like a next phase in my life. And I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, man. Yeah, you got to do that, right? It's so easy to just keep going. We talk about how fast time goes, and it's easy to just get caught up in that, and not like you said, smell the roses. With real quick, last question on this oxidative stress. Is there anything specific that you guys are like watching with that, or is it just is there any markers that you guys are looking at for that specifically, or?
Yeah, like your high sensitivity C-reactive protein
Yeah. Okay.
would be like the primary. Let me try and think if there's anything else that would mark that I would know that's not hyper specialized on lab work. That would be the primary. There's a lot of like subjective markers, right? If you're not sleeping well, if you're getting like the 3 a.m. wake up, what was another thing I started getting at the end of prep? Some of my hair started thinning from just like the stress and stuff. I was also getting this really weird, I would wake up and my eyes would be swollen. And there was this like joke on Instagram. I looked like one of the Ninja Turtles. And then by like midday, it would die down. And then the morning again, I would wake up, my whole face would be swollen. So there was like
So
these
that's kind of
high
a sign.
stress things happening at the end. But now, like all that's gone. I'm sleeping normally again. Like I said, I got labs done when we were back in the States for my wedding. They were like, I got them done on, I don't know, like September 29th or something like that. So 3 weeks post show, everything was fine. Everything was back in range already. So cortisol, my HRC at CRP never went up. And that's like a more systemic level thing where you can get some of those acute things. Cortisol was a little bit low. My reverse T3 was ironically low. I'd never seen that low on labs before, but that was one where I was like, I know food's going to be high, stress is going to be coming down, so I'm not going to go too far digging on things, but things were good there.
Yeah, again, that biofeedback and obviously getting some of those markers and stuff like that is going to help you there. Cool, man. Super insightful stuff, dude. It's fun catching up with you and everything like that. Anything coming out on your end that you want to let the audience know about, and where can they find you?
No, nothing too new. If you are looking to make any holiday or travel vacation plans to Bali, we have a wonderful gym that you are more than welcome to come train at. That is called Undefeated. I host a podcast with Brian Borstein, who we talked about very early in the episode. That is called Eat, Train, Prosper. I am most active on Instagram. You can find me there at Aaron Strieker. And I have been making a more slower push into YouTube as well, recording some like vlogs. So there's some of the things up there from some of my shows in the pro qualifier and stuff like that that you can take a look at if you are interested.
Man, yeah, no, that's awesome. Like I said, a lot of people are probably very familiar with Eat, Train, Prosper, but yeah, definitely go check Aaron out. Again, good chatting with you, man, and we'll chat with you again soon.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.